Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. Find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin and the Dynasty After Dark YouTube channel. You can find my co-host on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. And we're back. It's draft week. I'm super excited. It's going to be a fun one. You know, hopefully you guys have been following along. Today we're going to be bringing out our tight end rankings. We're not breaking this into two parts because we just want to get it done and over with as quickly as possible because it's gross. Tight ends are
Absolutely
gross. They are disgusting. So we're just going to do one today, and then we're going to probably come out with a final mock draft predictive, maybe a predictive, maybe a what we would do. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But that's going to be coming later this week as well before the draft actually hits. I got one more piece of content for you guys I'm keeping secret. And then on Saturday, we'll be issuing our recaps of day 1 and day 2. Not going to recap day 3 on Sunday just because it doesn't really matter as much. It's not going to be as critical. So Friday, Saturday, we'll be recapping the first couple rounds of the draft. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. And we'll break it out a little bit more. We'll do final rookie rankings next week, I think. And then we're officially into the offseason where everybody's drafts start kicking up. We can start talking about player specifics. And yeah, it's going to get a lot more fun after the NFL draft this upcoming week. Dale, how's it going today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. My throat's a little scratchy, so it's going to be interesting this week. But
Yeah.
I am I was going to say very excited to talk about tight ends, but I'm not. I just want to talk about maybe 6 of them, and then the rest can all just do whatever.
I at least have 7 noteworthy.
Eh,
It's growing.
yeah.
It's growing.
Mhm.
Yeah, allergies are in full effect
Full
right
swing,
now. So
full swing.
yep. So all right. So we won't drag it on too long. Again, before we get into it, if you can follow us on Twitter, like the video on YouTube, leave a review if you're not on YouTube, or if you want to leave a comment down below on YouTube, whatever it is. Wherever you listen to the podcast, just help us out by getting us out there with the algorithm. You know, we gotta fake it till we make it, so you guys can help with
Absolutely.
that. And if you can tell the podcast to one of your friends, come get our rankings. Maybe you want to keep them for yourselves, but you know the funny thing. I was just thinking about this the other day. Yeah, it's a lot of my takes, right? They seem out there, and I do them so early, and then they almost all end up coming true. And it's like, oh, you've been there the whole time. Oh, yeah, you finally came
Right.
around to this just like everybody else. It's like, no, I've been sitting here the entire time. The entire time. Like my
Right.
quarterback rankings, everybody's starting to be down on Bryce Young for fantasy football. I've been here the entire time. And it's like, everyone hates Will Levis. I've been here the entire time. And, it's just funny to me, like all these takes that are becoming crazy. Zach Charbonnet is most people's RB3 now. Kendre Miller is a lot of people's RB3 or 4. I've been here the entire time. It's like, it's funny because I'm an engineer, right? So we can just kind of play things out to the end, like logically, and I don't think a lot of people do that. And that kind of helps me here. But, it is what it is. So come get your rankings here first. And in 6 months' time, this is what everyone's rankings are going to look like. That's the whole point of the story. Moral of the story, right? Moral of the story. All right, so that said, Dale, kick us off. Who's your first tight end for Dynasty football?
All right. So in Dynasty tight ends, in my tier 1, it's the only guy I got is Kyle Pitts. He was very, very underwhelming last year. He had Marcus Mariota, who was throwing the ball to whoever except Kyle Pitts, and Arthur Smith was running the ball and not getting the ball to everybody but Kyle Pitts. And
It's not
it
fantasy
was very
football, Dale.
yeah, I know. It was very gross. It was very bad. I wish Arthur Smith would never call a play. But
To be fair to Arthur Smith, and I do have Kyle Pitts up here in my top tier of guys as well, so I'll talk on him as well. But, the one thing for Arthur Smith, he has been a good coach. And, ever since he's taken over the reins of this team, it's been a nightmare situation. They came in and the team was terrible. The last
We're
year,
very, very
everyone
bad.
says, "Oh, they were so bad." They were paying Matt Ryan $50 million to play for the Colts, and he was
Colts.
terrible. So it's like they had no money. It's just we got to
Yep.
remember that with the Falcons, and I get it. They were
Agreed.
trying to do whatever they
And
could to win games.
it was just bad, and it was
I
just
get
hard
it.
to watch
I
because
know.
they
I
weren't.
know.
It was the problem I had is that they have these playmakers that they got in the top 10 the past 2 years,
Yep.
and they're not getting them the ball. Like they're getting like
Right.
Demarius Bird or whoever, you know,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these targets, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
I'm with you.
That's beside the
I'm
point.
with you. I do believe better days are ahead. For whatever
I
reason,
agree.
they did not
I agree.
trust. And the biggest thing
I don't
that
know. I don't know what it
one
was.
one thing that I was thinking of, that the reason why they were doing this last year, honestly, I think that they could be trying to minimize injuries as much as possible
Yeah.
by running the ball as much as they did. Okay, yeah, you're burying
Tr-
Cordero Patterson, Caleb
Shortening the
Huntley.
game.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
exactly, you shorten the game
Shorten the game. Yep.
drastically. They played the fewest amount of real life minutes. They all played 60 minutes, right? But they played the shortest games every single week last year of
Mm.
all the teams. So, and they were fairly successful doing it. So I
That's
just
because
got,
their defense was trash,
I know,
though,
I
and
know, I know,
that's why they did
I
that.
know, I know. But no,
I
I'm
mean,
with
that's
you.
just a
Kyle
sign of a
Pitts.
bad team, but
Yep.
still,
Kyle
yeah.
Pitts. Sorry, I cut you off before. Go into
Oh,
why
it's all
you
good.
love Kyle
It's all good.
Pitts again.
Um,
Give us your
yeah.
reasons.
Kyle Pitts. He is too big, too talented. He is too much everything else to not be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And with him, I think he's going to be 23 this coming year, or he's 23.
He's
Oh
very
no,
young. Very
he's
young.
22. He is 22. So I am excited for him. He has many, many years to be successful, and
Mm-hmm.
I think he will be. I just think the injury was fluky and all that. So
Oh,
I'm
for
not too
sure.
worried about it.
For
Yeah, I'm
sure.
not too worried about it. And plus, I feel they really shut him down. Towards the end of the year to not have that injury risk and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that because it was pointless for him to play because they were out of playoff contention
Right.
and they were just trying to trying to go for the highest pick thing. So, I'm very excited for Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to be probably my number one in dynasty tight ends, probably for the next 5-6 years, probably.
Yeah, we'll see when Brock Bowers gets out here. That's gonna
That's very true. That's
that's
very
gonna
true.
compete with
That's
it.
very true.
But no, Kyle Pitts is a freak. He's my number 2 tight end, and we'll talk about my number 1
Ooh,
here in 1 second. But we are such a recency bias
we are.
society, right? And it's crazy to me because you go back to his rookie year where no tight ends ever produce, right? And he has 110 targets in that rookie year, 1,000 yards, 1 touchdown that year. Last year he had 60 targets through 10 games, which is about the same pace, but still not that great. And the difference was Marcus Mariota versus Matt Ryan. Now Matt Ryan was not good, as we all saw last year,
It was pretty
but
bad.
you get a competent quarterback in this team, and Kyle Pitts is going to eat. He's going to eat. I don't think the game plan was to take him out of the equation completely. So there is that piece of it, and I just think that there are better days ahead for Kyle Pitts. Worst case scenario, in 3 years, he's going to be a free agent, and then he's going to go anywhere that he wants to, and at that time, he'll
Mhm.
only be 25 years old. So there are better days ahead. You can't have a size freak like Kyle Pitts, and
Yeah.
yeah, you just got to buy into those elite, especially at a position where it's kind of rough out there. You just got to buy into those elite measurables, and when it hits, it'll hit. We'll see on
Mhm.
Thursday if the Falcons end up going quarterback. I doubt
It's
it.
gonna it's
It
it's
could
gonna
possible.
if
Stroud
certain
falls, man.
players fall, yes,
Yeah.
that's who I was gonna say. If Stroud falls to them, I think they'll take him. But that's a story for a different show.
Yep. So we will recap if I'll talk on Friday with the
Yes,
first round recap with all those quarterbacks because it's going to be mostly quarterbacks. I have a feeling on Friday. But
gonna
we'll,
be
we'll talk
wild.
about the teams and the impacts of that. So my number 1 guy is actually going to be Mark Andrews with the Baltimore Ravens. And the reason
Mm,
why, he's a little bit older, but the reason why he's my number 1 buy right now, he's 27. he's not that old for a tight end. They can easily play into their, 33, 35 age season. I mean, look at, my number 3 guy. Quick spoiler there. It's going to be Travis Kelce. He's 33 right now, and he's still playing like a monster. Mark Andrews is 27. So let's say you get another 4 or 5 years of elite Mark Andrews before he even starts to take a step back. The dude is a stud. Like, he's not the same type of tight end as Travis Kelce. That's fair, and nobody kind of expects that out of him. But Mark Andrews on the field is the production king out of him and Kyle Pitts, right? And, the only reason why I don't have Travis Kelce up here is because of the fact that he's 33 years old. Eventually, he is going to age out. It just happens to everybody. He's not as quick and as athletic as he used to be. Still very good, don't get me wrong, but he's just not the same level. Now, Mark Andrews, I think that he's very explosive. He's in the prime of his career, and he's with the Baltimore Ravens. They signed him to a long-term contract, if I remember right. So last year they signed him. They would have had to have. And the fact that this team is hurting for wide receiver. They bring in Odell Beckham Jr., which is great. Still have Rashad Bateman. We'll see if they end up going anybody in this year's draft in the first round. But I think the number one target for Mark Andrews, or for the Ravens, is going to be Mark Andrews. And you look, they brought in Todd Monken from Georgia. And who did Georgia have? Brock Bowers, who we all love. So Georgia knows, he knows how to scheme open a tight end. So I think that the offense is still going to flow through Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson or not. If they don't have Lamar Jackson long term, they end up trading him, whatever. They're going to have somebody to replace him, and they are going to utilize Mark Andrews. And I think that the production is going to continue. That's why he's my number 1 dynasty tight end right now.
Yeah, and I fully get that. I actually have Mark Andrews at number 4, which is probably a very hot take for you, especially. I mean, I do love Mark Andrews. I get all of what you said, but I think the two guys I have in front of him, I just like more, and I feel they're going to be very much more consistent.
Sure.
I think I'm a little bit worried about Andrews injury history that he's had. And with them changing the offense, I can still see him being a big part, but it's going to be interesting how big of a it's with Todd Monken. I mean, they are going to open it up more. They are going to take somebody else in the draft, and I'm not sure where the Ravens really stand right now with quarterback. So I'll probably change these again before the beginning of the season. But
Yeah.
as of right now, you know, I honestly think Tyler Huntley might be throwing to Mark Andrews, and that like it worries me a little bit with how good the offense is.
Yeah, we will see. We will see. So, who is your number 2 guy then?
All right, so my guy at number 2 is Travis Kelce. I know he's 33 years old. I know he is far past his prime. I get all those things, but this man produces and produces and produces and will continue to produce until Zeus himself does not want to play football. You know, I, I don't really understand why he keeps doing what he does. But it's probably because he has Patrick Mahomes and he gets like probably 100 something plus targets every
150
year.
last
Yeah,
year.
it's astronomical. And,
Yep.
and it's all the time, every year. I mean, the only year in the past 6 years he hasn't been a tight end one. He was a tight end two.
Yep.
So I'm not worried about it at all. Still think they're gonna run it back. I think they're gonna be very competitive again. And they don't really have anybody else to soak up the targets like he does. Like he had. I mean, last year he had 152, he had 134, and 145
Yep.
past 3 years in targets, and he's going to do that again, and then he'll probably do that for another year. So, I do see his dynasty value is not as great as Mark Andrews, but I would much rather have Travis Kelce because I know what I'm going to get week in
Yep.
and week out, and it's
Yep.
going to be it's going to be fantastic every time.
Yeah, and I agree with you. He's still going to be great, especially
Mm.
this year. But again, he's not what he once was. And as soon as this team gets, I think that the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is one of my only concerns about Travis Kelce, I do believe that the Chiefs are trying to get playmakers at the other positions. They've been trying to weave around Patrick Mahomes' salary cap hits for the last couple years. Now that everybody's kind of in the same price range as Patrick Mahomes and he's not the top end anymore, and the salary cap has grown as much as it has, I do believe that there's a lot more money on the table there they're out from the Frank Clark deal as well. So I think more money is coming to this team in the next couple of years, especially this season. And, you saw with Sky Moore in the second round last year, they're trying to find a guy. They traded for Kadarius Toney. Tony has no hamstrings that can keep him on the field, right? And
Yeah.
Sky Moore just wasn't what they expected. MVS was a cut candidate by a lot of people because he just cannot catch the ball. Juju was solid, but he's gone now,
Decent. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like Juju wasn't a superstar, but he was very solid. If man, imagine the team if they had Tyreek with Juju on that. Oh, it would have been crazy. But I do
Yeah.
believe that they're trying to find that reliable wide receiver on the outside that gives them, like a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type of player.
Hmm.
They're not going to get those guys
Really.
because those guys are one of a kind, right? But I think they're trying to get something like that. And of course, they had Tyreek Hill, but they just could not afford all the contracts that they had to keep Tyreek. It's just the reality of the situation. So they're going to try and find it, whether it's with one guy or three. Now, when it's three guys, that's where it helps Travis Kelce because he's the most reliable out of all of them, right?
Right.
But if they can get
Right.
that other guy or the two other guys, or if they can get a running game going that actually works and it's
Mhm.
not terrible with Clyde, I think that this team could very easily shift away from Travis Kelce being the number one option. But I could be wrong, and I do love him still. I do believe he's going to be a stud, at least for this year. But I think long term, I think he's running out of time. I think after this
Yeah.
year, he's a free agent as well. His contract kind of runs out. And at that point,
Right.
34, 35-year-old Travis Kelce, what are you going to want to pay him in regards to what
Right.
his production is, right? So
Right.
that's the only questions that I have right now, but the dude is still very good. He's with the Chiefs, and he's got Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, so you can't complain. That's why he's my 3, you're
It's
2.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, like what you see there. Who's your number 3 then? And then I think we'll be caught up,
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. So at 3, I have T.J. Hawkinson. I am in love with T.J. Hawkinson for some reason. I really love that. I really love that Minnesota traded for him. And then that gave them another option other than Justin Jefferson all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And and I feel that and I really feel that he's going to be Kirk Cousins' safety valve. If
Yeah.
if he starts to get in trouble, he can just dump it off to TJ, and he's going to get 8-9 yards every time, and it's going to be consistent. So I think in the season he was on a tear for a little bit.
He was doing good.
So
He was cooking. I mean, there
yeah,
was a game where against the Giants, he had 16 targets,
yeah,
12
it was
targets
just
against Green Bay,
was just
9, 8,
nuts.
8.
It was just nuts. I mean, it's very consistent
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the biggest
overall.
thing. Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
consistent targets compared to when he wasn't. It's when he was in Detroit, he wasn't getting a lot of these big consistent target games.
Right. Yeah, you can see to start the season with Detroit 4, 3, 3, 8 catches against Seattle where he had 12 targets, right? And I think everyone got injured in that game if I remember right. Then New England 4-1, Dallas 4, and then I think he got traded right around here. So,
Right.
it was definitely two different seasons for him last year. And I'm with you. I have TJ Hawkinson as my number 5, and I do love the consistency that he's going to give you. The only thing I will say is I don't think he's the best. He's not the best for big plays, right? Like he's very
That's fair.
efficient after
Yeah.
the ball is in his hands, but with Kirk Cousins, he's going to go to him in the red zone. He loves targeting those guys. He's also going to be a safety valve like you talked about as well. And that gives him a very high floor. And for fantasy football with these tight ends, that is literally all you could ask for,
All you
right?
have. Yes.
Um,
Yes. 100%.
but I just don't think he has those week winning performances. Really, I know he's got a couple. When you get 16
Right.
targets, yes, you're gonna probably have a week winning performance there. But all the rest of the weeks, 11, 15, 11, 16, 11, 7, 11. So he was just very, very consistent the rest of the time, except for the 36-point game. And I do believe he has a very high floor, a little bit of a lower ceiling. That's why he's my number 5. And I will be interested to see what happens when they replace Adam Thielen with a wide receiver this year, because, Adam Thielen was definitely burnt toast at this point in his career.
Oh, he was.
So
100%.
what's going to happen when they get some younger? Everyone kind of has him on Jordan Addison in the upcoming draft, which would be interesting. He's smaller, but
I get that, but I think they have a lot bigger needs,
I
and I
agree.
think
I
KJ,
agree.
I feel
But
KJ Osborne is a solid number 3
sure.
catching target
Sure, but here's the
for
thing,
offense.
right? Here's the thing. This team, I don't know if one player fixes the defense. So if you're looking at it, the
True.
offensive side of the ball, one wide receiver makes this makes a massive difference on this
A scary
offense. You know what I
team.
mean? So that's all I'm thinking. We'll see on Thursday
Yeah.
how it actually shakes out, but I just think that one good wide receiver can really make this an elite offense, and maybe they tack some things together and hold the defense together by silly tape at the end of the year. But I just don't think one defensive player is going to fix that entire defense. That's my only thoughts. We'll see if they agree with me or not. But, I'm just interested to see what ultimately happens there in the draft. Maybe they had nobody and TJ Hawkinson gets a lot higher of a ceiling because of the much higher floor, right? It's going to raise his floor even higher. So I
Right.
like TJ Hawkinson. He's my number 5. My number 4, though, is going to be George Kittle. And I think
Love
that
it.
George Kittle, he's still in the prime of his career. Everyone
Mm.
looks at last year and, he missed. Everyone has a very bad taste in their mouth because he started the year last year terribly. It was an
Yes.
awful start to the season. He missed the first 2 weeks of the season. Then he was bad the next 2 weeks after that. Really didn't get him involved much. And then after Jimmy Garoppolo got injured, ooh, baby, man, it was guns blazing for him at the end of the
Yes.
year. And him and Brock Purdy, like he was Brock Purdy's favorite target. And,
Absolute favorite.
it helps when you cap off the last 4 games of the season with 7 touchdowns. Like it was
Mhm.
nuts. But, he's a very good player. He's more boom or bust than any of the guys we've talked about so far, except for maybe Kyle Pitts, right? But Kyle Pitts is 22 years old. George Kittle's 29 years old. But man, when he goes off, dude, he will win you a week. And, when he gets 25, 31, 19, 25, 21, like he was extremely boom. But then the rest of the weeks, 5, 4, 6, 4, 6, 7. So it's like, you take it or you leave it with George Kittle. And that's kind of up to Kyle Shanahan a little bit, because the game plan will be, whatever we can do to win that week. But I do believe that Trey Lance is gone out of San Francisco. Sam Darnold or Brock Purdy, whoever's the starter for the time being. And then if they bring in Tom Brady, my galaxy brain thought right now is that, Tom Brady's retired. Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy are going to be the starters. And if ultimately, they have a string of bad luck like they did last year, Tom Brady's retired, he's going to stay in shape, and maybe he comes off the
It's
bench and
possible.
comes in week 10 and just rides this out and sees how far they can go in the playoffs, right?
It's very possible, yeah.
This is Galaxy Brain, only if
I know.
he's needed kind of thing, right? And I think that they're going to
Yep.
trade Trey Lance to whoever the highest bidder is that they can get this Thursday. So we'll see, but, I just think that Trey Lance is gone. George Kittle hasn't been the biggest advocate for Trey Lance anyway in the locker room. So
That's absolutely true, yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold love to target George Kittle. Sam Darnold, go back to all his career, he's loved to target the tight end position. So I think that George Kittle will have those boomer bust days regardless of who the quarterback is. Even Trey Lance, we just don't know what these two, I mean, the 2 games that Trey Lance played, George Kittle was injured. So we don't even know what the targets would look like between these two guys, right, when they're on the field together. So I do like George Kittle. I think he has a higher ceiling than Hawkinson, which is why I have him one spot ahead of him. What are your thoughts on Kittle?
Yeah, no, I fully get that. And really the reason I had Hawkinson above Kittle, well, a couple spots higher was it was because of his age. It's comparatively. And I do 100% agree with what you said that for Kittle he's more boom or bust. And that's really how he's always been, and that's where it can be really frightening because he can have these fantastic weeks where
Mm-hmm.
he's scoring 30 40 points, and then next week he gets 3 points, and you're like,
Right.
well, it's like, well, crap at that point. So I kind of think we're getting to the tight end territory now where a lot of these guys are boomer bust, and it's kind of ranking them if they're really, really boomer bust or if they're kind of meh boomer bust, on those games. So,
Yep.
I love George Kittle. I think he's fantastic for the Kyle Shanahan offense. And I think if San Francisco goes with Brock Purdy, I'll be very, very happy because that's what's going to elevate Kittle. But if it's Trey Lance, I think Lance will run more, and that will take away some targets for.
Yep. So we will see. I'm with you 100%. So yeah, at this point, it's kind of what pick your poison. So where did you have Kittle ranked?
Right. I have him ranked fifth.
Okay, so we are now officially our top five. We're through our top five. Who's your number 6 then?
Mine is Dallas Goddard.
Okay. All right.
So I really like Dallas Goddard. Goddard, I think he's very solid with Jalen Hurts. Um, Even with having it's the likes of AJ Brown,
Yep.
who is a target monster. Same with Devonta Smith.
Right.
I but the biggest thing with Dallas Goddard is injuries. Man can't stay injured or stay healthy.
Yeah, he's missed multiple
And
games last couple years, but
yes.
the good news is when he played, he was very, very good.
Oh,
Very
it's
good.
great. It's great. But it's the concerning thing is that he's only played one full season.
Hmm.
That was his rookie year, and he's never gone over 1,000 yards, and the most touchdowns he's had is 5. So, and I
Yep.
think that was a Carson Wentz year. So
Yep.
that's a little concerning. And with there have well, so there has been some rumors of the Eagles picking JSN at 10. So
We'll
the
see.
Eagles had J
That's the
if the Eagles
dumbest
had,
thing I've ever heard, but
it would
yeah,
be
go ahead.
really dumb, but I've been hearing a lot of rumors here in the past couple days,
Sure.
um, whether it's true or not. But it's despite that, he's I'm a little worried about that because his highest finished has been 10th,
Yep.
and and we're a little worried about that. It's kind of going forward. He's 28 now, and I wouldn't be shocked if they try to draft another tight end to kind of replace him. Eventually, like they don't have that guy on the roster now, so
Sure.
it's going to be interesting what they do in the draft.
Yeah, so I have Goddard 6 as well. I still have him in the tier of the guys that we've been talking about. I think that
Agreed.
he does have
Yep.
a very high floor. You can see if you're
Yeah,
watching on
he does.
YouTube, all the games that he played. He did miss 5 games right in the middle of the season this last year, but pretty much every other game he was double digits. Not win you the week type of guy, but again, TJ Hawkinson light,
Solid. Yeah,
right?
it's solid. Yeah.
Um, and I do remember there was multiple games, I think it was last year, where they had touchdowns called back on holding penalties on him. And it's like he would have had, I think, around 6 touchdowns if those penalties hadn't happened on literally plays where he scored a touchdown. So
Right.
very unfortunate there. But yeah, the thing with Dallas Goedert, again, I'm with you. I think that injuries are a little bit of a concern. But I think his last year was kind of a freak incident, right? It was a shoulder. shoulder injury, right? The AC joint or something like that, which is kind of a freak one. I don't think it's something that's plagued him continuously. They're always injury prone until they're not. And I don't think anything that
Right.
he's had so far is indicative of future concern. It's all just kind of random things, So we'll see if he can finally put together a full season. But man, he was tearing it up this last year, and that's with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith in the first year of a new second year of a new system. I guess first year with AJ Brown in the mix as well. So
Right.
I think that there's some potential there. I just don't think that there's that high of a ceiling with Dallas Goedert. And this is, again, to the point where give me the floor where I'm not going to get completely burned by the tight end position. But I think that, yeah, his ceiling is very limited. We'll see. Maybe he's being overranked a little bit as I start to think through this a little bit more. And maybe I'd prefer to have my number 7 guy a little bit more than him just for the ceiling factor. But my number 7 is going to be Darren Waller. Now, Darren Waller was banged up last year. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But man alive, that guy, when he's on the field, dude, he gets targeted. And it's kind of funny, everyone says, oh, well, he was really injured last year. But all the stories and rumors after he got traded to the Giants was him and who's the head coach there? McDaniels. They did not like each other at all
Yeah.
whatsoever. Darren Waller got married and they didn't even invite him to the wedding. So
Right. Right.
it's like, all right, yep, sounds good. So there's definitely some bad blood there. Now we're 2 years removed from Darren Waller's peak year, and that's with John Gruden. But I will say, when you look at this transaction, they gave up a 3rd-round pick for Darren Waller, which is a big commitment for a 30-year-old
Is.
tight end, right? He is by far the largest and probably best pass catcher on this offense right now. Now, everyone
As of
has
right now.
them taking another wide receiver in the first round or trading for like a Jerry Jeudy or Brandon Ayuk or something like that. I think they ultimately do that as well. But, looking at the roster right now, Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell, Isaiah Hodginson, Sterling Shepard, Wandale Robinson, Jamison Crowder, David Sills. These are all the other pass catchers on this team. None of
Mhm.
them have size. They're all slot wide receivers, all of them. So, except for Darius Slayton, he's a little bit of an outside guy. Darren Waller is going to come in here and he's going to eat in this offense. I do think that this offense is a good system. The only question is, can Daniel Jones do it? And we don't
Yeah.
know. That's the question. We don't know. Daniel Jones has never had a competent receiving core in his entire career. And, you build that around him. Maybe it could be Josh Allen. It really could. I know it's easy to hate on Daniel Jones, and I'm not the biggest fan of Daniel Jones, but we just don't know that side of his game yet, and whether he can support multiple wide receivers, tight ends, like pass catching options on this team. So, I'm going to bet on it because Darren Waller, I still believe, has a pretty good ceiling, but I do believe that the injuries have shown he has almost no floor. The last couple years
Yeah.
combined, he's missed a lot of time over the last 2 years. So, you gotta make a decision on Darren Waller. Are you willing to buy in and say, 2 years ago, that's what Darren Waller is: 146 targets, 107 catches, very reliable hands? Or is he what we saw the last couple seasons where he's banged up a lot? So it's up to you to decide, but I'm still
Yeah.
betting on the talent. You can't do that in back-to-back seasons and not be a good player. I just think that there's been a lot of turmoil the last couple of years in Vegas, and Darren Waller's kind of been the reciprocant of it. What are your thoughts on Waller?
Yeah, I see that. I get why you would put him at 7. Um, I actually have him at 11. This is where I have him. Um,
Okay.
the injuries worry me, and I understand that like Josh McDaniels did not like Darren Waller, and I think the feelings are mutual, obviously, and I don't really see him getting the 146 targets that he got with Derek Carr in the 2020 season. I don't really. see him doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can see him having a solid year this year, but potentially, but that's if he stays healthy.
Sure.
And I think they're gonna do a lot of dink and dunk kind of stuff. Like they're gonna try to control Daniel Jones as much as possible, and that is really where Darren Waller will shine.
Mm-hmm.
But he has to stay on the field, and last couple of years he just hasn't done that. It's when he is on the field, he's fairly consistent. I'll be very honest, and he probably will be either the one or two first or second read in a passing on a passing down.
Yep.
So
I'm with you.
like that's going to help him, but I just I can't trust him long term. I can't even really trust him this year until I can see him having like a good 8 game stint of being healthy before he gets hurt.
Sure. All right. So who's your number 7 then?
Um, so at 7, I actually have David Njoku, which I feel a lot of people can have the same argument
Sure.
with Darren Waller, to be honest. Um, so last year, like I think in Deshaun Watson, it was Njoku and Waller's first game together, or not Waller and
Watson.
Njoku and Watson. Thank you. In like his first game together that they played was against the Bengals, and he had a very solid game. I think he had 2 of his 4 touchdowns in those weeks.
1 touchdown that
Um,
week, but yeah. Yep.
and it's for the rest of the season.
Oh, yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, sorry.
Gotcha.
But overall, like it was pretty decent overall, and then like even when he played with Jacoby Brissett, he was still having a fairly
Dude, he was
solid year. He
solid
was
under
he
Jacoby.
was he was
Oh,
extremely solid. So
not
I
solid
think
under
where
Watson. No one was good with
yeah,
Watson,
it
really,
it
but
was yeah, it was really, really shaky because Watson was rusty,
yep,
and I think a lot of that's going to
work itself
develop
out.
over it's going to work itself out over this off season, like with him and Amari Cooper, and they're probably and I can honestly see them bringing somebody in day 2. I think they
Well,
have
they
a
got
day 2.
Elijah Moore, right? And then
Yeah,
DPJ.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
this
and
this
Elijah
offense is
Moore.
decent, It's
Not
definitely
bad.
decent.
Yeah,
Um,
it is not bad looking, and I think with some of their potential offensive line troubles that they're probably going to have, because it seemed
mhm.
like whoever, like I think Conklin got injured quite a bit, and these other players got hurt. So you know, I really think I really think David Njoku is going to be a benefit of some of those things, and I think he's going to have a fairly good season. It's not going to be super great by fantasy standards, but by tight end standards, I think it's going to be a solid wide receiver one or tight end one season
Yeah, so they don't have a pick until the 3rd round, pick number 74,
round.
which
Yeah,
is interesting. But yeah, I was gonna say if they had a second rounder, they could definitely target offensive linemen there because
yeah,
they're going to be quite
that's
quite nice.
that's a
But
need. Yeah,
yeah, right. So yeah, I do agree. I think that there's some potential with David Njoku, but I'm just basing it off of, he did most of his work with, and I honestly, full transparency, don't have David Njoku in my top 12. And the full reason is because he did all of his work with Jacoby Brissett. And you look at what he was on pace for. Yes, he had 2 touchdowns with Deshaun Watson. That's not really that great when you add in the yardage of he had about 150 yards. Not spectacular. Um, and that's in 5 games. So averaging about 30 yards a game. You don't love to see that. He averaged about 4 catches, 3 to 4 catches a game. You don't love to see that. I think I'd say about 3.5. So that's not great statistics for a top 12, and I just don't think he's going to finish there. Um, I just don't know if he's part of the game plan long term. We'll see. I could be wrong, but I don't know. The injuries of David Njoku, the lack of production for most of his career, I've just been burned too many times. So I'll let you prove it on the field. He's still young. He's only
Yep.
26 years old, but yeah, I'm
it's
just
it's And it's crazy to think that he's only 26 because
No, man.
he's been in the league 6 years.
I know he came
It's
out
and
so he was
and
basically Kyle Pitts, right? Like
pretty
size,
much.
speed, and everything. But yeah, it's crazy. So my number 8 guy, and maybe we're lined up here. I don't actually know, but my number 8 guy is going to be Evan Ingram with the Jaguars. Now, Evan Ingram, 28 years old, 6'3", 240, monster season in the back half of last year, and the Jacksonville Jaguars signed him to a 1-year contract, I believe. They're trying to get him to a long-term. They franchise tagged him. That's right. So they're trying to get him to a long-term contract before that deadline of training camp or whenever it is later this offseason. But last year, man, he started off slow. If you're watching on YouTube, 4 targets, 8 targets against Indy. You'll love to see that, but only 46 yards, 3, 1, 10 against Houston. Really started to show a little bit more there. And then the back half, man, they were using him in the back half of the season. And then in the playoffs, he was kind of, him and Trevor Lawrence had a real connection working there. And if you know anything about Doug Peterson, dude likes his tight ends. And there are no real options at tight end other than Evan Ingram. Now, a lot of people have talked about, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Darnell Washington, or somebody like that in the first round to the Jaguars. I don't see it personally. I think that, you don't franchise tag Evan Ingram if you're going to try and get a tight end in the first round of the NFL draft. That just doesn't happen, right? Or at least you franchise tag him and you don't try and work him into a long-term contract like the GM has said he's trying to do, right? So I think they're ultimately trying to make Evan Ingram a centerpiece of this offense. Now, this offense is good. Don't get me wrong. It's got Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones. It's not really hurting. They could use maybe one other wide receiver, a wide receiver 3, but Travis Etienne, he can catch the ball as well. JaMychal Hasty, Dearness Johnson at running back. Maybe they bring in some other guy at running back like a Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet on this offense would be disgusting, by the way.
Right.
But, they really don't need many other pass catchers. Does that mean Evan Ingram's going to be otherworldly and safe? No, that's why he's number 8 for me. I think his floor can be very bad. There's a game where he had 1.4 points, 14 points, 40 points. It's like he's very up and down, and it's going to come and go as the team comes and goes, right? But I do think that they figured something out after the bye. He had 4 weeks out of 5 right after the bye where he was just cooking, and his lowest points in those was the 1.4, but then his second lowest points was 14 points. So he has a very good ceiling when it's clicking with Evan Ingram. It's always been this way in his career. When he's on, man. But when he's off, he's off. So it's kind of like all tight ends. I like this offense a lot. I like the coaching staff. They know how to utilize tight ends. So I like Evan Ingram quite a bit and a little bit more than some of the other guys out there. I trust this offense more than some of those other guys. So what are your thoughts on Evan Ingram?
Yeah, no, I do agree with all of what you said. Like I have him at number 9, which
Okay.
is, which is fairly close in our in our rankings. So, it's the bigger thing with him. Like as long as he's on a 1-term deal, I think he's going to do fantastic. But I think once you get a deal in place, personally, like it seems like he just kind of crumbles, which is
It is true.
it's a very lazy analysis. I agree, but it is true. So I think the biggest thing with him is going to be the addition of Calvin Ridley
It's
and
going to
how
be
much
interesting.
of that's going to be very interesting. So I kind of think that's going to take away from all of those guys that you mentioned. Yes, it's going to take away from Ingram. It's going to take away from Zay Jones. It's going to Christian Kirk. It's going to be interesting how much those targets go to Calvin Ridley, and
Sure.
I think it's going to be quite a bit, unfortunately.
I do believe it's going
And
to eat up some of his targets, but I think it's going to open him up for more of the down the field work, which
yes,
he's a very
yes,
good athlete, and that's always what he's been,
100%,
right? So if he's getting a few more
100%.
deep shots versus playing more slot work, which is kind of what they used him for in a lot of these games, that could be really good for him where he's not being targeted super, super close to the line of scrimmage. I mean, He's getting targeted on an average of 7.8, which is terrible. That's terrible. That means he's not working down the field at all. If Calvin Ridley comes in here and opens him up for more deep shots, I like that a lot for this offense. Yes, it's going to hurt his target numbers, but I think his yardage could go up quite heavily in that
100%.
regard. So, it's a little bit of a trade-off, but I'm with you. We don't know how this offense is gonna work with Ridley in the mix.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting with the Jags, and I like to pick players that are in good offenses, and I think Ingram is on a improving offense, which is really good for him.
All right, so who's your number 8 then?
So my number 8 is Pat Freiermuth.
Okay.
And it's and I feel the only reason I had Freiermuth ahead of Ingram is because of his age. I think Freiermuth he's 24, and like he himself is a physical freak, like most of these tight ends that we see.
Yep.
And I'm not super excited about Pittsburgh's offense. I'm actually very disappointed that they brought back Matt Canada.
Yep.
Like they kind of brought it back another year of mediocre offense. And with Kenny Pickett, I really think Kenny Pickett loved Pat Freiermuth, but like he had 98 targets, which is great, but I not only about 70% of those were catchable, if that.
Right.
So that's going to be the thing, and it's with that. I don't really think a lot of those targets are going to go away compared to Evan Ingram. I feel the addition of Calvin Ridley is going to take away some of those targets. So, I really feel that he's going to have a very good role in this offense. I don't really see Allen Robinson taking a lot of targets from him.
No.
By any means. And the only person that I think would take away targets would be George Pickens, but that's because he's playing more. He's just
sure.
Like he's just becoming more part of the offense, and I don't foresee that as a bad thing.
Yeah, and I think so. It's funny. I have Freiermuth as my number 9, so we just have these guys flip flopped in our rankings here. But no, I do think that there's something there. The question is going to be, Pittsburgh has always kind of utilized tight end position, so I'm not too worried about that whatsoever. I just don't really see him having a high ceiling, and that's kind of the problem with Freiermuth. His highest point game last year was 16 points, so there's really no ceiling, but he was fairly consistent with some of it, and that's, again, this is to the point where if you can have a consistent, close to 10 points every single week, not the end of the world. Great. It's not elite, but it's not terrible, right? And that's why Travis Kelce's the number 2 tight end, because he's giving you 25 points a week, but you got to pay out the nose for him, right? So Freiermuth is somebody that's not going to kill you, but he's not going to save you at the same time. Now, the one thing I will say, and just quickly, before we rattle off the last couple guys here, but Allen Robinson, I still think he's got a lot left. Did you see his little video that he did? He never had time to practice with Matt Stafford the entire training camp. I just think that him and Stafford never had a chance to.
I don't care. I do not want Allen Robinson on my squad. I don't think he's worth anything. I think that's
he's not worth anything. I will agree but
he is. Yeah, he's not worth anything.
He's worth
a
7.
I don't want. Yes, barely that.
Yeah.
Like the Rams were trying to pay people to.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So we'll see. I'm telling you, man. I think Allen Robinson has a little bit left in the tank, but I'll save that for another video. No, so I'm with you on Pat Freiermuth. He's only 24 years old. He's only got 2 years. And again, these guys sometimes take a little bit of time to break out. If it wasn't for Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth would have been the number 1 tight end in that draft class, and pretty clearly. So there's a lot of potential there with Freiermuth, and we'll see how he kind of grows into it. So my number 10 guy is going to be Hunter Henry. And I know this is kind of easy to hate on, but Hunter Henry, man. Dude, we can't live in recency bias. Last year was a bad year. I'm not denying that. But we also had 2 dumb. I'm trying not to cuss here. We had 2 morons running our offense, right? Where we had a defensive coordinator and a special teams coach running our offense. We have an actual offense now. Bill O'Brien, one, loves the tight end position. Yes, they brought in Mike Gesicki. I don't really care. They play different positions. Like Mike Gesicki is more of an outside wide receiver than he is a tight end. Hunter Henry is the traditional Gronk tight end, and I get it, he's not Gronk, but Mike Gesicki is more of the Aaron. Who was the Hernandez? Yeah, Aaron Hernandez,
Yeah.
tight end for this team, where he's going to be the athletic guy on the outside. That's what they play, and that's fine. I think that the offense that the Patriots have, yes, they're looking at Zay Flowers, and probably we're going to take the wrong wide receiver in the first round. That's fine. I've prepared myself mentally for it. But there's a big lack of weapons on this team. And I do think that Hunter Henry and Mac Jones have a very good rapport when they're not, being directed by morons on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that there's a lot of potential there. And, just 2 seasons ago, Mac Jones' rookie year, Hunter Henry was a top 10 tight end, and he was very good. He had 9 touchdowns that year. A little bit more targets, a few more catches, not amazing. He's not someone who's going to get 1,000 yards, but I do believe that he has a lot of potential in the end zone, which is where Bill O'Brien loves to target the tight ends, and where Hunter Henry thrives is in the red zone. And, he does have that rapport with Mac Jones. So I think Hunter Henry has the potential to jump back up here to a top 12 guy. And again, we're just kind of betting on nothing. Hunter Henry's shown the flashes multiple times. Before last season, he was the tight end 10, 13, and 9. So he's been a top 12 guy, 2 of the last 4 years, 2 of the last 3 if you take out last year, right? So I think that we're living in too much recency bias. This offense, yes, they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster, but they still have Devonta Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton, Ramondre Stevenson, Mike Gesicki. It's not a great offense on the paper. Hunter Henry is one of the best pass catchers on this team. So I do think that there's a lot of potential there. You can give your quick spiel, and then you can give your next guy.
Yeah, for Hunter Henry, I get it. I get what you're saying. I just not a big fan. I'm not a big Patriots fan, which that doesn't help either. I see the talent, but I have to see this offense go before I get excited about Hunter. They were a dumpster fire last year. They brought in Bill O'Brien, but it's going to take a little bit for him to implement offense,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be interesting in New England this year. So,
Yep, I'm with you.
um,
All right, so your next guy.
yeah. So at number 10, I have Greg Dulcich,
Okay.
and with him, like he's a second year player, and I think he has a lot of upside. It's compared to some of these guys that we've seen that are these staples, like with Greg Dulcich. Like he was kind of the dynasty darling. I kind of felt in a lot of drafts like he fell quite a bit in fantasy drafts,
Yep.
and overall, like he's been solid. He was charted behind Albert Guam. I probably
Ogwebanam,
butchered
yep.
his last name.
Yep.
Yep. And unfortunately, I had Albert O 12th in last year's
Tried to win you.
dynasty tight end.
Tried to win
So I know, and I think Greg Dulcich is a lot better.
you. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's a lot better, and I honestly foresee one of these wide receivers leaving.
Maybe
It's
even
either going to be
both of
Cortland
them.
Sutton. Yeah, it's either going to be Cortland Sutton or Jerry Judy, and
Mm-hmm.
then fire up Tim Patrick for me. I'm really excited.
Yep.
Then you got Greg Dulcich, and I think that's going to be great because I think Russell Wilson is going to be
Better.
yeah, he has to be better. He has to be.
I'm with you.
You know, he like really personally, like he was a flaming dumpster last year, and I feel a lot of it was coaching, a lot of it was him trying to be Mr. Unlimited, and we saw how that worked.
Yep.
So, I think this offense as a whole is going to be a lot better, and I think Greg Dulcich is going to be part of it.
Yeah, we will see. So the only reason I didn't have him top 12 is just because, I like the potential there. But all new system, he was tight end number 29 his first year. Only
Yeah.
played 10 games. I don't remember him
Yep.
having injuries more or less than just not, just being a rookie.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I just I heard there's a report that the coach, what's his name, Sean Payton,
Sean
isn't
Payton.
thrilled with Greg Dulcich as a prospect. So that kind of worries me a
Fair
little
enough.
bit there. So we'll see what happens this year. But Greg Dulcich is the best sleeper candidate out there for me. Um,
Absolutely.
he has the potential to jump really high up in my rankings next year, like top 10 roughly. But yeah, I just don't have him there right now. He's very, very close to top 12, but he's not in my top 12 at this point in time. We saw flashes, but just not enough. And then you change the whole system around this kid, and it's hard to trust it. All right, so my last two guys, I actually have two rookies. I'm going to have Michael Mayer and Dalton
Hey.
Kincaid, both of them at 11 and 12. Now, this is a little bit controversial, but I do believe that these guys are both going to be first round picks. Michael Mayer is the most Travis Kelsey tight end that we've had come out in a long time.
Yeah,
The way the dude
I
just
would agree with
finds
that.
the holes in the zone is crazy. He's just so reliable. And I get it, he's not the best athlete out there, but he's extremely reliable. And that's what you got from Notre Dame. Yeah, he's not the blazing guy that Dalton Kincaid is, but Dalton Kincaid was a former basketball guy. He has very, very good hands. But he can't block to save his life, and he's from a weaker conference. Didn't have the same production that Michael Mayer did. Now, I do like Dalton Kincaid, and I do believe he's going to ultimately be a first round pick. If he's a first round pick, it's going to be because of his pass catching jobs. He's going to be going somewhere to be utilized as more of a wide receiver than a tight end, which is why I like him for fantasy football. If you can get a Kyle Pitts rookie year, right, where he's getting 1,000 yards, okay, he only had one touchdown that year. I don't know if that's consistent. Matt Ryan just did not throw touchdowns in the red zone ever for whatever reason. But, Dalton Kincaid, if he goes to a decent offense, he's going to be like Kyle Pitts' rookie year, in my opinion. Now, Michael Mayer, I think that he's someone that is going to be like a TJ Hawkinson his first year, where he's going to finish right around top 12 for fantasy football. He's not going to have a massive year, but I think he could have 75 targets, 60 catches, and about 700 yards. That just seems like a Michael Mayer stat line to me. So I believe both these guys are going to be first round picks. I think that their teams are going to draft them knowing what they have in these two guys, and they're going to invest in them. So, what are your thoughts on those two, and who are your last two guys?
Yeah, on Michael Mayer is my 12th guy,
Okay.
and then I had Waller at 11, which I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, we already talked about Waller. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I had Michael Mayer there. I think out of the tight ends, out of the out of the early round tight ends, I think Michael Mayer will be the one that really hits, and he's going to be very solid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like
Limited ceiling, I will
I
say.
yeah. So yeah, it is a more limited ceiling, but I would much rather have that in my tight ends compared to Dalton Kincaid, which can be really cool or bust, all
Right.
depending on all these other factors. So I kind of feel that like I honestly feel like Michael Mayer is kind of the Travis Kelsey or like the Jason Witten type. Like he's not super athletic,
Mm-hmm.
but he's very smart and he knows how to play a defense.
Yeah, and the one thing
So
too, like the one piece of it, no, Michael Mayer isn't the best athlete out there right now.
oh,
But
yeah,
everyone acts like once you get drafted to the NFL, you can't get better. And it's crazy to me. Like, it annoys
right.
me every time. Yes, he can get better. Like, he can get more athletic. He can get a nutritionist that helps him to get into the best shape of his life. And, I'm so sick of these people saying, like, oh, yeah, once you get drafted, that's what you are for the rest of your career. It's like, no, they can get better, man. They can get better. So, Michael Mayer is starting with a super high floor and he can get better. So that's all I'm saying.
And yeah, no, I completely agree. And then with Dalton Kincaid, I'm very excited about him. I think he's going to be very explosive.
Mm-hmm.
I thought so. I think that Lance Zierlein had him comp to Zach Ertz, which I feel is honestly a very good comp because like a very young Zach Ertz was very pass friendly, but really couldn't block. Like he didn't have like he wasn't very good at that. and it's with Kincaid. I think he's going to be super solid, very good. All depending on landing spot and who his corner.
Yeah, that's where we'll see what ultimately happens. But yeah, we'll recap that on Thursday. Again, I think these two guys are probably guys I'm going to be recapping on Friday. So make sure you guys come back and check that out. And yeah, it's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a fun draft on Thursday. Dale, any last thoughts on tight ends before we get out of here?
Take him away from me.
All right, all right. Yeah, the last half is a little rough, you know. There's about 7
Rough.
guys that we trust for week to week, week in and week out startability, but yeah, the last guys there's a little bit more projection to those guys or hope or whatever. So thank you guys
There's
again for
something.
joining us. Like I said, we got the draft on Thursday. You can hit us up on Twitter with any draft questions before the NFL draft. If you have any, we're going to be doing the mock draft here in the next day or so. And yeah, you can find us on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale. Thank you guys for joining us. And until next time, have a good night.